Hi, my name is Cherie, and today I will be demonstrating Assessment 2, Part B of Practical Thought 4, which is Counselling Therapies 1. This assessment will be a formal discussion of the role play demonstrated in Part A. So, let's get started. Firstly, I will talk about the approaches I used that focused on a person-centered therapy. Although they are not specific techniques, these principles were still important for this type of therapy. The role play illustrated many principles of the process of person-centered therapy. At the start of the interview, I might make it clear that I am leaving it up to Wade to talk about whatever he wants. I do indicate that the session can be a deep exchange, but it does not have to be. I also signify I'm ready to enter immediately into a person-centered exchange in which I will be very ready to hear whatever Wade chooses to bring up. After this, my responses are consistent attempts to understand Wade and to communicate or check out my understanding of his feelings. I show that I am open to whatever kind of feelings he verbalizes. This includes recognizing a negative feeling, anger. I also respond to a mixture of feelings when I suggest it sounds like a very doubling feeling, and continue recognition of Wade's feelings throughout the session. An example of this is when I say a lot of pain. Can you say anything more? What's this about? The whole interview reveals many examples of the way in which change and growth are fostered in the person-centered approach. My straightforward statements in the opening of our session allow Wade to begin with a statement of the problem of concern to him and to initiate dialogue at a level comfortable for him. There too are numerous examples of Wade expanding his view of the problem after I recognise his stated perception, accepted it unconditionally, and communicated my understanding to him. So, as I've mentioned, many principles of person-centered therapy were used. The two main principles I believe I displayed throughout the session, the reasoning behind why I selected these, and the effectiveness of using these principles include displaying unconditional positive regard. It was important for me to communicate a deep and genuine caring for Wade as a person. It was important for him to know I wasn't evaluating nor judging him. Research suggests that the degree of caring, prizing, accepting and valuing of the client in a non-possessive way, the greater the chance that the therapy will be successful and forward movement is likely. I knew it was important for Wade to believe that he is a person of worth and a person capable of growth. I had to make sure I let Wade be whatever immediate feeling that was going on, whether it was confusion, anger, sadness, excitement, etc. I believe I was effective in displaying the technique throughout the interview. However, I do believe it's quite hard and not possible for therapists, myself included, to genuinely feel acceptance and unconditional caring at all times. The next principle I used in person-centered therapy was being empathic. My main task was to understand Wade's experience and feelings sensitively and accurately as they were revealed in the moment-to-moment interaction. I aimed to sense Wade's feelings as if they were my own, without becoming lost in those feelings, which I found quite difficult. Part of empathic understanding is my ability to reflect the experiencing of Wade to encourage and enable him to become more reflective himself. This is important because if done right, it results in Wade's self-understanding and clarification of his beliefs and worldviews. I chose to focus on this approach because accurate empathy is the cornerstone of person-centered therapy. Research has also consistently demonstrated that empathy is the most powerful determinant of client progress in therapy. Being empathic helped Wade pay attention and value his experiencing, see earlier experiences in new ways, modify his perception of himself, others, and the world, and also to increase his confidence in making choices and in pursuing a course of action. I believe I was quite effective in demonstrating empathy. One example of when this is demonstrated is when he makes his own decision at the end of the session. However, I did find it hard to not lose my own separateness. I think this skill will take plenty of practice and concentration. Next, I will talk about the Gestalt processes and techniques I used with Wade, the reasoning behind why I selected these, and the effectiveness of using these techniques and methods. Focusing on the here and now. It was important for Wade to appreciate and fully experience the present moment because power is in the present. When a client focuses on the past and the future, it can be a way to avoid coming to terms with the present. As demonstrated by Wade, it was a common tendency for him to invest his energy in bemoaning his past mistakes, saying how life could have been or should have been different, and by engaging in endless resolutions and plans for the future. As he directed his energy toward his fantasy about the future, his power of the present diminishes. So I tried asking what and how questions to promote now awareness and avoided asking why questions. As like with most people, Wade stayed in the present for only a short amount of time. I chose to allow him to flee from the present moment, only to extend another invitation minutes later. In one example, Wade talked about his past, and I asked him to bring the fantasy here by imagining his ex was sitting in an empty chair. Centering on the here and now enabled an equality between myself and Wade, because in the present field, all parties can use their senses, intuition, and creativity to explore the multiple influences that are at work. My main aim for Wade was to become truly aware at every instant of himself and his actions on whatever level, fantasy, verbal or physical. He can see how he is producing his difficulties, he can see what his present difficulties are, and he can help himself to solve them in the present, in the here and now. I don't believe I was very effective with using this process because I found being the therapist, it's quite difficult to focus on the here and now at all times. I also believe the fantasy exercise I used should have gone for a lot longer for it to have been more useful. The Gestalt experiential technique I just demonstrated was the empty chair technique. This is where I asked Wade to sit in two different chairs and represent the reasoning and or arguments behind giving Tracy a chance in starting a relationship with her, then alternate and give the reasons and or arguments behind not giving her a chance in starting a relationship with her. I believe this technique was important because it was one way of getting Wade to externalize his introject so that he can experience the conflict more fully. Then the conflict can be resolved by Wade's acceptance and integration of both sides. I wanted to help Wade get in touch with the feeling or side of himself that he may be denying. Therefore, rather than merely talking about the conflicted feeling, he intensifies the feeling and experiences it fully. By helping Wade realise that the feeling is a very real part of himself, the intervention discourages him from disassociating the feeling. The goal of this exercise was to promote a higher level of integration between the polarities and conflicts that exist in himself. Therefore, the aim was not to rid himself of certain traits, but to learn to accept and live with the polarities. I believe I was quite effective with using this technique because Wade had two opposing sides and was able to complete the exercise comfortably without too much confusion. I also understand and appreciate the importance of how this technique works, which made it easier for me to incorporate into the role play. Overall, I enjoyed using the Gestalt approach to therapy because of the exciting way in which the past is dealt with in a lively manner by bringing relevant aspects into the present. Being the therapist, I was able to challenge Wade in creative ways to become aware of and work with issues that were obstructing his current functioning. My role as Wade's therapist was to provide a safe environment and employ relevant techniques that would help him achieve his goals in therapy. I do believe there are areas I need to work on for improvement and change. Firstly, I think the following aspects are important in all counselling relationships. That is, providing a growth-promoting climate, developing a relationship between client and counsellor, remaining congruent, displaying unconditional positive regard, and being empathic. These skills are developed over a period of time through practice. This is the first time I've demonstrated these skills through role play and realised it's a lot harder than what it seems. Even applying some of the Gestalt techniques was quite weird at first. I believe that the exaggeration technique would have been very beneficial for Wayne, but I shied away from using this technique because I thought it would have been hard for my study partner to demonstrate this, and he may have felt uncomfortable with completing this task. I think it's important that in the future I put my clients' needs before my own and not shy away or avoid from using techniques because of my lack of confidence in performing them. In regards to indicators of issues requiring referral, I believe there were no such indicators in this case study that suggested that Wade should be referred. Wade demonstrated no child protection, suicide, domestic violence and/or family violence, mental health, alcohol and/or drug issues. However, in future sessions, had Wade indicated signs of any of the above, then I would need to explore the matter further. I would check with my organisation's policies, procedures and guidelines regarding referrals, and if I was still unsure whether he required referral, then it would be my responsibility to consult with my supervisor. My first priority when making referral is to act in the client's best interests. However, as I mentioned, at this stage I don't believe referral was required with Wayne. And that takes me to the conclusion of this discussion. Thank you.